What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? The Yankees have been one of the best teams in all of baseball all season, while the Mets have been on fire and have climbed into the wild card race in the National League. Yankees fans Victor Cruz and Rob Duran returned to Sports 360 to join me and my boy Rob Hoskins, Mets fans from Queens, to talk some New York baseball. In addition to kicking it on the Mets and Yankees, we also talk about the game. Juiced baseballs, a little Bryce Harper, a little Mike Trout, and why is it taking so long for MLB teams to install protective netting? Doesn't make sense, man. All in all, a good conversation with regular guys who enjoy the game. So get ready. We're about to start round two of Mets fans and Yankees fans talking baseball on Sports 360. Scully Productions. Well, we are back for round two of Mets versus Yankees. And just as we had the first time around, I'm joined by Rob Hoskins, Rob Duran, and by Victor Cruz. What's up, guys? How you doing tonight?
Doing good. For having fun again.
Doing great, Jeff.
I'm glad to have you on because, as some will know, Rob Hoskins and I represent the New York Mets, who just happen to be the hottest team in baseball right now. And Rob Duran and Victor Cruz represent the New York Yankees, also known as the Evil Empire. So it's good against evil on tonight. So Rob Hoskins, I'm going to start with you, man.
It always is.
What about the Mets?
Okay.
What can you tell us about the Mets?
All right. Well, let me say this because I'm not gonna start in on the Yankees right now because look, the Yankees.
Well, there's
are
nothing to start in on.
30. Oh, okay. Listen, Yankee fan, just hold yourself, okay? Hold your water for a minute. So, the Yankees, okay, they're 30 games over 500, whatever it is. That's fine. Listen, you guys always schedule the parade, at the end of April. You think you've won it already. So let's not go there. Let's talk about the Mets. The Mets, it was a typical Mets season. They start off looking pretty good, and then they can't close a ball game. 20 blown saves, whatever it is, before the All-Star break. And we go into the break and go towards the trading deadline thinking that we're going to, trade a starting pitcher and, it'll be just one of those seasons where we limp it on in. And then they turn it around, win 7 straight, 9 out of the last 10, 12 out of the last 13. And next thing you know, we're creeping up the division. And honestly, the only teams I'm looking at right now are the Phillies, the Nationals, and the Braves. I don't really care about the Yankees. The Yankees have their own issues. That's a whole nother story, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit. But the Mets are really showing you something right now. And one of the biggest things that I keep hearing is that, the Mets have won this streak and so forth, but they're beating the Marlins, they're beating the Pirates. And I say, yeah, they're doing what they're supposed to do. That's the schedule, right? You're supposed to play who's on your schedule, and you got to beat those teams. Those are the teams you have to beat. So it's this weekend where I'm focused. Yeah. The Nats coming into town. If we take care of business, 2 out of 3 there, then I'm going to get super hyped about this season. But until we start to take the lunch of the Braves and the Nats and the Phillies, I'm still kind of just sitting here just holding it close, watching each and every game, and just enjoying the performances. I mean, you've got, what else can you say about Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil and Conforto coming around now, like, gangbusters? I mean, it's amazing. And that's what the Mets are right now. They're amazing. And you know what? Every Met fan is going to tell you, they just hope that it keeps on going. And
what about the Yankee fans, though? But hold on a second, Rob.
Well,
so we got to get the Yankee fans a little. We got to give them some room here because they're going to have some things to say because they got one of the better records in baseball.
Yeah, which is amazing because they got a mash unit over there. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, and that's a total surprise. Being a Yankee fan, I would have never guessed at how great the team is playing this season, considering that we've been playing with a lot of minor AAA and AA players because of all the injuries. So, one, that's a testament to the quality of the talent we have in the minor leagues, which is great to see because, Yankees for a long time would leverage their talent, their young talent for the major league squad. So to see that we have a nice, fertile farm system with players that can step up and come in and produce every day, that's been great. But yeah, that's been the shocker. We'll take it though, because obviously the Yankees having a great season, and when you see the young guys playing, and then the reinforcements are your top level guys, that's great because every time you need reinforcements, it's not coming from the minor leagues, it's going to be off the injury list and top level quality guys. So for me, the season's going according to plan. It's just not according to plan as to who's producing the season, because we would have never expected all the young guys that you don't really recognize being the ones catapulting the team. But that's been great for the Mets. From my perspective, I will say this: working in baseball, for as long as I did, what you hope to do is you hope to use the middle of the season and the trade deadline to light a spark. And the season for the Mets was going, typical, like you mentioned. And for us, not being Mets fan, typical means, all the talent not doing much with it. But I will say it was shocking at the trade deadline for you guys to try to trade for a frontline starter, and that created a spark. And that's kind of what you guys have been riding now, which is it's cool to see. You know what I mean? That's what you hope would happen. And, within striking distance of the wild card. Now, I wouldn't have my hopes a little, more than that, but it's good to see, I guess.
Rob Duran, what about your take on either the Yankees or the Mets?
Well, I'll start with, I know Rob said he wasn't going to go after the Yankees, but I'm going to go after the Mets a little bit just for fun. A lot of what Victor said is kind of what I feel as well. Like the Mets definitely, they hit the sparks. They shocked everyone trading for Stroman. And just, the energy that Pete Alonso, McNeil, and those guys are bringing, it's kind of like that David Wright, Jose Reyes feel from back in the day where you got these young guys who are producing and, bringing that energy to Queens and all that stuff. But I think when you look at the standings, and this is honestly more about the teams in front of the Mets than it is about the Mets themselves. Just looking at in the wild card, Milwaukee, St. Louis, and then the Washington Nationals and the Phillies, I think the Mets will make noise. I think next year is kind of like the Mets' time to shine a little bit more. I don't know if they'll make a big run this year just based on those teams in front of them. But, the rotation is obviously, if everyone stays healthy, is one of the top rotations in the game. Offensively, maybe they can do a little better. Cano didn't exactly produce the way they expected this year. And obviously the bullpen is a struggle, but I can see why you guys are a little excited. Finally, it's been a few years since
I will say that Cano has been producing for me and on my MLB The Show team. So that's the one thing about him. The Mets, Cano's been one of my main guys.
Well, you don't have him anymore. What is that, fantasy, or is that
no, that's
about the show?
That's the video game, yeah.
The video game. Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
So good thing the injuries don't translate, because he's hitting bombs for me. I bet you guys wish he was hitting them for you, but for me he's producing.
That's all right. We got some guys hitting bombs. So
I will say,
hey,
I will say, Pete Alonso at the All-Star break. Well, Pete Alonso's the one who won the home run derby, right?
Right.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. That was a shocker. I was like, who the heck is this guy? But again, not watching him every day, I didn't know enough about him to think he had that kind of power. So that opened up my eyes a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's been doing it. I mean, he was struggling a little bit until recently, and now he's hit, I think, home runs in each of the last 3 games.
I tell you what, it wasn't looking pretty.
Home runs if he keeps going though, because when he gets hot, man.
Yeah, he's a streak. He just goes on those streaks. Tell you what, I was kind of like watching the soap opera, because remember, right before the All-Star break, didn't they have like chair throwing sessions in the clubhouse with the GM and vote of confidence? Vote of confidence is usually the kiss of death. So,
yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, I mean the Mets. The Mets were going in the wrong direction, right? And look, I know when they traded for Stroman, my first thought was, what are they doing? And then but then when I realized that Stroman, had another control year. In other words, the Mets still would have him for next year.
It was smart.
And if the Mets season didn't go well in the beginning of the season, then, they would have an asset at next year's trading deadline, right? And I said, you know what, that kind of makes sense. And then, when they didn't trade Wheeler, now you start to look at that rotation, and Steven Matz is the number 5 starter. I mean, those first 4 guys are pretty solid, right? Yeah. And so, right now, and I hear, I think it was Rob Duran who said, looking at the teams in front of the Mets, but Milwaukee's scuffling, in my mind, they've been up and down, and Yelich with that back. I mean, who knows what's going on with that? You know what I mean? The Cardinals, Goldschmidt hasn't been playing well, and the Cardinals are kind of up and down. And I haven't been impressed with the Phillies all that much either. So to me, those 3 teams that are in front of them, and even the Nats, but certainly those first 3 teams, I think they all have some issues. So, the Mets obviously got to keep playing well, but they're situated pretty nicely right now.
Yeah, to Rob's point too, I know he mentioned they play the Nationals. After the Nationals, they play the Braves too. So,
yeah,
the Mets, I know they, you're beating the bad teams. Like, I don't believe in that so much, just because, you have to beat who's in front of you. But if they can go on a nice run and beat Washington and the Phillies, now it's somebody you got to look at.
Yeah,
and they gained ground on the makeup in the game behind column. They'll make up ground there, and that's why I said it's this weekend is where it's at. If they handle Washington 2 out of 3, then it's going to get really serious. And I think, like you said, the teams in front of the Mets, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Washington and Philadelphia, those are the teams that are not going to want to play the Mets, especially if the Mets starters continue and stay solid. I don't know, I'm not going to say the bullpen is great. I mean, because I'm always going to be nervous when they run Familia and Diaz out there, but Lugo is pretty locked down right now. And, I think, I don't know if Callaway's going to do it, but I could see Lugo having the 9th inning. And, cause he's been pretty unhittable. And I think that could be a real formula for success for them. So I'm just a little worried about the depth, in the lineup right now.
Putting Lugo in the 9th and maybe giving Edwin Diaz the 7th or 8th. Because sometimes that's really all the closer needs when they're struggling. Just kind of, even the Yankees did it with Chapman, I believe, last year. They, put him in the 7th inning just to kind of get his rhythm going. And then he goes back to his old self. So,
treat it like it's the 9th, but, just get his confidence up to that, real closer mentality and level. And I think, he'll be more effective.
Because he has the talent. That's fair.
And let me ask the Yankees. Let me ask Rob Duran and Victor something. Talking about, let's switch it to the Yankees for a little bit. And I want you to talk about the Yankees, but I also want to put the Houston Astros in the conversation because obviously at the trade deadline they went out and got Greinke, man. I mean,
Yeah,
so now they got Verlander, they got Cole, who's just been phenomenal, and now they
Yeah.
add Greinke to the mix. Um, the Yankees are been playing really really good baseball, but man, now you're looking up and Houston looks like
yeah. I mean,
that they
they look.
really gangbusters. How do you feel about the Astros?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, for me, it's a big concern, and here's why. As everyone knows, in the playoffs, good pitching beats good hitting 90% of
Every
the
time.
time. So
Yep.
having three number one starters to face in a short series, even in a long series, is going to be crazy when you don't have the same type of performance from your pitching staff. Because right now, who are going to be our top guys? I mean, you got Herman, right? Hopefully Severino comes back. And then you got a kind of a two-headed horse of Tanaka and Cece, because Cece you throw out there for the veteran, you think he's going to do something, but that's not the same quality as the top, the three guys from Houston. So that worries me. In terms of offense, I think we're above them in terms of talent, so we can mash. But like I said, good pitching beats good hitting in the playoffs in a short series. So that's going to be a concern. And look, I mean, the microcosm of the Yankee season is I don't know if you guys are watching during the Red Sox series, the last game. I forget who was up to bat. It might have been Gio Urshela, but the dude guy fouled off two pitches on both his legs. So it's like that's how the season's been going. You hurt one leg and then boom, you hit yourself on the other one. It's like it can't go any worse. So anyways, but that's kind of hopefully we can get the injury bug away. Maybe some of the pitching staff, the starters will step up and second half of this one, not even second half, we're already in August. So the last, month and a half of the season, month and 3/4 of the season, we can really solidify our starting pitching. But I think it was a mistake to not trade for a starter. And especially when you have and I just spoke about this a little earlier, all the young talent in the minors, we can use some of that talent to go get a number one starter or a frontline starter to help with our pitching staff, because that's our biggest concern right now.
Yeah, so why is it that the Yankees and the Mets won't do a deal? Because they were actually the best trade partners at the deadline at the time. And
well, you never trade with your rival, and it's almost like for the same reason that
but they're not rivals. They're not true rivals.
Right. It's city rivals. So, with the New York media, you don't want to deal with that. It's the same. I find it as the equivalent, even though it's not the same because we're not in the same division, but it's almost like trading with the Red Sox. You just don't do that. And so with the Mets, you don't, because that's your city rival, and you don't want to hear the New York papers. You don't want the rest of the season to be about that in the papers. So,
and I think
let me ask you, professional baseball people, this question. But so how does that work in that's one thing here in New York, and growing up in New York, I've heard that for years and years and years. But I mean, what about Chicago? The White Sox and the Cubs don't make deals. The Dodgers and the Angels don't make deals. The A's and the Giants. Is it similar? I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm kind of sort of a little bit. But, is it that bad? Is it just because it's the Mets and the Yankees? Because honestly, I mean, think about it. You guys could have possibly have gotten, if you put the right package together, you could have gotten Zach Wheeler.
Yes, but here's why I would never do that. And as you mentioned those other cities, I was trying to think. The Angels and Dodgers, when was the last time they made a deal? I can't think of one on the top of my head. And then when you have the two Chicago teams, the same thing. And here's the thing. So put yourself in both shoes. Let's say you trade someone from the Mets to the Yankees and vice versa, and they produce on the other teams. Then you have to hear that. You know what I mean? All the writers are going to ask is, why did you trade this guy? Look at how he's producing. Did you make a mistake? And you don't want it to be about that. And so while New York is a big market and, the Mets-Yankees thing is so huge, Chicago, I don't think is much like that, and neither is here in Southern California, the Dodgers and Angels, but you still don't want that because that's a distraction. You're always trying to avoid distractions, and so even, trading within the same city, it's a distraction. It could potentially be a distraction.
Yeah. Well, even though it wasn't a trade, we had to endure Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden winning the World Series with the pinstripes on. I even had to watch Dwight Gooden throw a no-hitter in pinstripes.
Yeah, but for us,
crying
that
out
wasn't
loud.
a distraction. It was like, we'll take your guys after the fact and we'll make them winners.
Well, wait a minute. They were already winners before they got there, okay?
Right.
So.
But, yeah. But everybody remembers more what they did at the end with the Yankees and all that celebration.
Oh, whoa. No. Nobody remembers the Yankees version of Doc and Darryl. The 30,
right,
the
what
30
I mean by
for
that
30.
And what I refer to that is not necessarily their whole career. I mean, everyone remembers what, them coming over and doing what they did for the Yankees while they were winning the championships and stuff like that. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't mean necessarily that overcomes their career. I mean, in terms of like winning moments, like, wow, look at what they did at the end of their career, and it had to be in pinstripes, of course.
Rob,
Yeah,
Duran,
no, I'm gonna disagree.
I thought you were about to jump in and say something there.
Yeah, I was talking about the trade between the Yankees and the Mets. I know a lot of what was kind of, and I don't know if it was actual stuff, but stuff that was going around was, like, for example, like with Syndergaard and Wheeler, they've been on and off this year a little bit. A big worry that I was reading around, whatever it is that the Mets were afraid that, kind of what Victor was pointing out, that they would succeed and kind of reach their full potential in a Yankee uniform. So that's kind of why they were afraid to make the deal, even though they matched up so well. Because, like, if you look at the Mets roster, what they need is an outfielder who can hit, and we would have that in, like, Clint Frazier, for example. You need, infield depth. We got that in Estrada or Tyler Wade, even somebody like that. And the packages matched up well between both teams. But I think it's a lot of just what the market is, which is New York, such a huge market, and just, that inner fear of, if I trade this guy who was supposed to be, an all-time great, and he struggled here with me, and then all of a sudden I trade him to the Yankees, and he becomes fulfills his potential, what the heck do I look like? And I think that's kind of why they don't really make deals with each other.
Yeah, and look, I'm with that. I wouldn't trade with the Yankees either if I'm the Mets, and vice versa for those reasons. Even if the packages line up, I'd rather trade the guy to Kansas City. If he does well, I'll hear about it from afar. I don't have to see it right in my face every day,
Right.
Yeah, but what if it leads us? What if it? I mean, I don't know about a lot of Met fans, but I want another shot at a Subway Series. I don't, and I don't care who's wearing the pinstripes. If a trade like that gets me the kind of hitting or the depth or that, gets me into the NLCS and potentially the World Series against the Yankees, then I want to do it. I mean, I would hate to see Thor in a Yankee uniform and then have to face him in the World Series. But you know what? We know him, so we could take advantage of what we know about him. We'd have the scouting report. So, I don't know if it, I don't know. I just feel like, I want my team to get to the postseason and have a chance. And if it means, possibly facing the Yankees, I mean, that's what, I don't know about you, Jeff, but that's what I want. I want another shot at them.
I'm going to be honest. Of all the teams in baseball, I wouldn't want the Mets to be playing the Yankees. I think there's something about the Yankees that the Mets just can't get past.
Well, but didn't they say that about the Brooklyn Dodgers? I mean,
I don't know if they said that about the Brooklyn Dodgers or not. I just know that the Mets can't beat the Yankees. That's
well,
what
I don't know.
know.
I know what it is. It's the I'm your daddy of the city syndrome. That's what it is. It's like, I'm your daddy here.
No, that was the Red Sox. That was the former Red Sox pitcher. Yeah, that he was claiming that they were his daddy.
Yeah, but
No.
I'm telling you though. I mean, look, the Yankees to me, when I watch the Yankees, and again, I'm not a Yankees fan, but I do appreciate this about them. You know, when Aaron Boone told that, when he really lit into that umpire a couple of weeks ago,
The savages in
remember
the ball.
when he kept, my guys are
Hmm.
savages in in the batter's box?
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, right. When he lit into that guy, he was telling the truth. When the Yankees are in that box, they make it hard. They make the pitcher have to get him out. And I think better than a lot of other teams in baseball, because I see some other teams and some other guys. It's almost like I don't want to say they give away at bats, but the at bats are a little
Yeah.
easy. The Yankees make you work, and it's from first inning all the way through.
Right.
And I hate seeing those guys, man. I just do, because it seems that you just never get a break.
And you know what? It's
That's
funny you
true.
mentioned that because this Yankees roster, and I know there's a lot of injuries and stuff like that, but like for me, when the signing of DJ LeMahieu happened, a lot of people were up in why didn't we get Machado or Harper? We signed this guy. Nobody knows who he was. He played for the Rockies, regardless of his gold gloves and all that stuff. No one knew who he was. But when I saw that they signed him, I was excited because the kind of professional hitter he is.
He's been
And
the MVP for us this year, yeah.
oh, definitely. And just the way he hits is what we needed last year. Just a guy who can hit with runners in scoring position. And what he's been able to do has kind of trickled down to every hitter. And that's why I'm very excited about the Yankees this year. It's a huge difference from last year. And I know last year they hit, a million home runs and broke records and stuff like that. I'm okay with not let the Twins have the home run record. They can keep it. But the way they're hitting with runners in scoring position and playing more small ball, even though they're still hitting their home runs, is the night and day compared to the Yankees of last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, you said something interesting. I want to talk about this. You talked about the home runs and let the Twins hit, the most home runs. I saw something recently where 4 teams, including the Yankees, and I think it was Seattle, and I forget who the fourth team was, they're on pace to break the Yankees team record for home runs, right? 4 teams. And this year, you know, the projections are at least 500 more home runs than last year. And we've been seeing it, right? I mean, the balls are just flying out of the park, right? Um, you know, I think when you look at the five, the 5 seasons with the most home runs ever in baseball, 4 of them have been in the last 4 years. So, right now, I mean, Victor talked about the show, and Robinson Cano, it is like lighting it up in his game. But isn't that what's going on in the real game of baseball? I mean, it's like it's almost like a pinball
It's
machine. You know
Pinball.
what I mean? How do you guys feel about that? All these home runs being hit.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
theories about the balls being juiced, and I know Manfred has come out and said, denied all that and just said, oh, well, it's the way they're made this year. Maybe it's a little different. I think there's truth to the balls being juiced. I think if we remember what kind of quote unquote saved baseball, it was the home run chase from the 90s. And I think, PEDs aside and all that stuff, which may not be as big an issue today as it was back then, but I think there's truth to maybe the balls being juiced and the game being tailored to home runs. Kind
Well,
of
here's
like
the
the
deal.
NBA being tailored to the 3-point shot now.
Yeah, see, what I think is, the PED thing, getting past that, on the rearview mirror, I think it's created an environment where hitters have had to use technology to figure out how to get some of the results that, I'm not saying everyone was doing substances, but what I'm getting at is nowadays they're more fresher because they've been forced to figure out how do I, in terms of conditioning and preparation, get myself prepared to battle in a long season. And so they're more fresher. And to be honest, I think the pitchers have been a little bit behind because right now a common ERA, average ERA is what, like a 4? Think about it even in the 90s, right? I mean, your top frontline starters were all what, 1, 2, 3 was a bad ERA for a good pitcher. And so I think it's a combination of hitters making adjustments, not just at the plate and on the field, but off the field, and pitching lagging behind. And I mean by that is, in terms of how they're going to step up their performance is what I mean, and how they're going to step up as professionals. And I'm not saying they're being unprofessional. I'm just saying that, again, the PED issues coming and being at the forefront of baseball and forcing hitters to figure out how do I keep myself in the grind in a way that is healthier, is legal, and then now employing those tactics, and you're seeing the results on the field. And so I think that there's a mismatch there because again, every time I see a 4 ERA and people are writing or talking about how, oh my God, he's got a low ERA, it's a 4. Are you kidding me? I mean, that to me is a horrible ERA. But anyways, that's just my kind of thought on it, and I think that's what's going on. That's just my opinion, but.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that. But one of the things too that we have to acknowledge, right? Guys are trying to hit home runs, right? I mean, there's this emphasis on launch angle and hitting the ball in the air, and baseball talks about the 3 true outcomes, right? So you have home runs and the strikeouts and the walks, which to me is killing the game as far as from a spectator standpoint. But I mean, you see guys going up there and trying to launch the ball, right? So I think between that and the ball, I think what Manfred did acknowledge, and it's interesting, he used the term, there's less drag on the baseball, right? But they didn't quite know why. But, whenever you have less drag, that means whatever that vessel is, whether it's going to move quicker, right? It's going to, it's going to be able to move freer, whether it's through the air, as in here, or through the water or whatever, when you have less drag. So, something's different with the ball, number one. Number two, you have players who are going up there and trying to launch the ball, this emphasis on launch angle. And then, Victor, I do agree. I think pitching isn't what it used to be. And so, it turns out to be, I think, a bad combination.
Yeah. I think you've got such a proliferation of power pitching where guys are throwing 96 plus.
Yeah.
So more hitters are able to get used to that speed, and you put the barrel squared up on a 97 mile an hour fastball. You don't even have to hit it that well. It'll go right over the wall, sneak right. If the wall is 410 feet, it'll go 411. It counts the same as hitting it 460. But it'll just get out. And, and with everything else that you talked about with the ball, it's not that difficult, I don't think, to surmise that the hitters are able to take advantage of that. I mean, Conforto hit one today that went a mile in the air and just dropped a foot behind the wall, and it didn't seem, and with a full uppercut swing, and if it wasn't that hard of a pitch, maybe it would have stayed in the park and been an out instead of being out of the park.
And a couple of weeks ago, there was a lot of coverage on Francisco Lindor because he hit a home run, and it's like he swung almost like with one hand, you know what I mean? And he dropped down to a knee or whatever. It was not a home run swing. And obviously Lindor, does have some pop in his bat. There's no question about it. But when he hit that home run, there was a lot of people took to social media saying that's it. that's proof positive that the ball is juiced, right? Because it really was not a good swing. And, it seemed like it should have been a can of corn out to right field. And it ended up going several rows deep, as a home run. So,
And
something is up with the ball, no doubt.
We've seen so much of those kind of swings this year. And even just watching games on TV, sometimes you see these fly balls and you kind of just look away knowing that it's going to be an out and it's a 3-run shot. And you're like, well, how the heck did that get out? Just based on the swing, somehow it gets out. It's crazy.
It's becoming a lot like which I joked around about the video game, but I played the video game, and I got to tell you that it's becoming a lot like the video game. Where here's one thing: I was pitching, I threw a down and away curveball. My opponent reached for it, hit a home run to right field, and I'm like, how's that even possible? How's that even possible? And so sometimes you're seeing that in real life, and you're like, I guess it is possible somehow. But in the old days, that wasn't even possible.
No.
So, yeah.
Yep.
So let's on a more serious topic, because again, I mean, we joke a little bit about the whole Met Yankee thing, but I know you guys really like the game of baseball, love the game of baseball. And on a more serious topic, what are your thoughts on netting? And, we, again, have seen another season where serious injuries to, children and others with foul balls going into the stands. Why do you think it's taking so long to do what obviously needs to be done, and that is to extend netting all the way down the line?
Well, I mean, for me, baseball's a traditionalist sport, right? So everything in baseball is at a snail's pace, and it's not necessarily the individual item that's up for discussion. It's that everything they do is at a snail's pace. Because honestly, I don't see, when you look at other topics, it's the same thing. When to bring about change, it's taken a while. But with this, I don't see a downfall. I mean, you have people who say, oh, it takes away from the game. Honestly, it doesn't. Think about sitting behind the plate. How many people, those are premium seats sitting behind the plate, and you always got netting. So you're going to have netting down the lines. You're still going to have opening. It's not going to enclose you. It's just going to be direct, line drives. You're going to be protected. But anything hit over the netting, you're going to be able to catch. So it's just like sitting behind the plate, no different. So I don't see any reason why there should be any negativity towards that, because, here's the thing. People are always talking about, well, we want the kids and we want the youth to experience the games. And you're seeing a lot more kids sitting down there, which was a problem because we weren't having, it was a lot of like we'll take Yankee Stadium for an example, where we was complaining that the suits are sitting in the good seats. So now you have kids sitting down there, which is what we wanted. But now we're complaining because the kids aren't always paying attention and are going to get hit with a ball. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. So if we want our youth to enjoy the game, we want people to come in and, potentially new fans, then you got to protect them, because you can't expect in today's day and age where attention is short for everyone to be watching every pitch. And even when you're watching, those of us that have been in the ballpark, even when you're watching, man, those things come at you real quick. So I'm all for it.
Okay.
I just think it's a baseball thing. It's just they take their time doing everything.
Yeah, I agree. I'm all for the netting and it being extended foul pole to foul pole. We've seen, I think it's what Victor's saying, baseball kind of falls behind and they're too reactionary to things instead of just kind of taking the action ahead of time. And I kind of spoke out about this myself, and I kind of got attacked because it was like, oh, well, we can't take that fan experience away. Oh, how are they going to get signed autographs? But that stuff happens before the game. A lot of these nets, they're retractable. There's access to players. All that stuff still happens. But now you're keeping people safe. And, whether you're paying attention or not, 110 miles an hour coming at you, that's less than a second you have to react. And if you're a kid, you don't have that reaction time. Even if you're an adult, you don't have that reaction time. And some of these professional players don't have the reaction time, like the third baseman or even the pitcher. They get hit off these line drives. So imagine a fan who's not a professional. So I have no issue with it being – I'm actually pretty passionate about it, because it's going to get to the point where we're going to see something tragic. And, hopefully it doesn't get to that. But that's kind of, I feel like, what MLB is, quote unquote, waiting for. Just something tragic to happen to then say, okay, well, now we're forcing everyone to extend the net because we can't have someone else, end up dead or something like that because of foul ball.
Yeah. I tell you, I don't understand, the back and forth on this. I think it's a no-brainer. You got to put the Nets up there, and in my time and going to games, the chances that I've had to sit, behind the plate and kind of near the dugout, when I was sitting behind the plate, I think like Victor was saying, it's a no-brainer. You're right behind the plate. The ball is coming back there. The nets are there. You feel pretty good about being safe, except, the ones that come straight up in the air, and that's fine. You have a chance to react to those. But whenever I sat down the lines or near the dugout, boy, I tell you, that was nervous time, because being around the game, knowing how baseball is, you have to be ready. And like you said, kids, older people, people who may not be all that into it, you've got to be ready if you're sitting in those seats. And so to me, it's a no-brainer. And what I can't understand is, on every level of baseball, from Little League, and I've been on a lot of baseball fields, high school, tournaments, all these things, everybody's behind the fence.
Yep.
Because the ball is going to come that direction. I mean, these places that have tournaments, they even have netting. Okay, so you'll have 4 fields back to back, right? So you'll have 4 fields facing all 4 directions. And in the walkway between the fields, there's nets above your head. Why? Because foul balls come and they don't want people to get hit in the head. I don't understand why Major League Baseball thinks that, this is not something that they can do, or they're worried about, the fan experience. The fans don't want to experience getting hit with the baseball. They want to get the baseballs, and I think, like you guys mentioned, the foul balls that are catchable are going to be there, but the ones that, like you said, are hit 110 off the bat, that nobody's catching them, and if you do, you're going to be in a whole world of hurt. So to me, it just makes no sense. I mean, I've had 2 sons play high school varsity baseball in the last 8 years, and there's no way I would ever watch the game from not behind the fence. I mean, it just makes no sense. So.
Yeah. And I want to piggyback on something Victor said. He talked about, a little bit of tradition, or, baseball is kind of slow to react or make change or whatever. And, in terms of pace, to me, baseball has an issue, right? And I think we saw it at the trade deadline, right? We get to the trade deadline and people going, oh man, ho hum, there's not really much going on at the trade deadline. And then there was some movement, and especially the Greinke trade shook some things up, but it seems like baseball has a problem with inaction, right? During the off season, hot stove is now cold as ice, right? Trade deadline was a bit boring. Even the way the game is played, they seem to be suffering from an action problem, right? Both on the field and off. And, when you look at the other sports, basketball's free agency, everybody was talking about that for weeks, right? Because of all the movement. And yeah, you can complain a little bit about it in terms of, is it too much and what's going on? And the NBA has some issues with what's going on, and they're looking into it. But man, it was exciting, right? NFL still remains, to me, the king of the sports in terms of capturing the imagination. I mean, it's August, and we're talking more. If you listen to talk radio, they're talking more about NFL than they're talking about baseball. So it just seems to me baseball has some issues, man, with in terms of capturing the imagination of their fans, because they don't seem to, whether it's free agency, whether it's on the field, whether it's trade deadlines, they just don't seem to generate action. And action in this day and time, man, that's the way you got to keep people's attention.
I think that's definitely true. I think maybe part of it is also the lack of marketing that MLB does with their exciting players. And like you see the NBA, LeBron wasn't even in the playoffs, and we're talking about LeBron in the playoffs or LeBron coming up next year. And the NFL, the same thing. You hear year round, oh, when's the countdown to the NFL season starting? What's going to happen with this person and that person? And MLB doesn't do that. I think they rely so much on we're America's pastime that we're always going to be there. So we don't have to go the extra mile because we're just, we're America's pastime. And they're losing themselves with the younger generation who are getting hyped up and excited about the NFL season coming up or the NBA season coming up and things like that. And it's also a lot of, you see, even in college sports, there's excitement about college football and college basketball. And there's not a lot of that with baseball in general. And I think the sport itself just doesn't do a good enough job to market the sport. And that's why they're kind of losing the interest. And everything they do, like you said, it's at a slow pace because they feel like maybe, well, we don't have to do as much. We're always going to be there. We're always going to be America's past.
Yeah.
They need to be careful about it, though. Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
I just got to tell you, Jeff, I think, and I've had this discussion with a few folks, and honestly, I think that in basketball and maybe a little bit in baseball, you have you have too many teams and you have too many games. I think that what the NFL does right is there's 16 games. It's once a week. There's a lot of build up. There's a lot of excitement, and there is a lot of unknown. I mean, you can watch a baseball game every night of the week and you get to see the best players of the game maybe once or twice a week, unless you have the MLB package and you go out and seek those games. But, fans in New York don't get to see the best player in the game, play in New York unless, but maybe 6 times a year or 3 times a year when the Angels come into town.
Well, all season they pick the Yankees.
What's that?
I said all season.
I'm sorry.
They play for the Yankees.
Yeah, okay. I don't think Mr. Trout plays for the Yankees, but anyway, I digress. But but honestly, who cares about the Angels? The Angels are, they're out of it. They're done. Nobody is even talking about them. And that goes to what I think Roberto was saying as far as marketing the premier talent in the game. LeBron's not in the playoffs in the NBA, but all during the playoffs they're talking about LeBron and the Lakers. And the Angels aren't going to be in the playoffs, but nobody's going to talk about Mike Trout. But I want to see Mike Trout play. But you know what? There's not going to be a real opportunity to do that. And I mean, I made the argument before that maybe there's too many teams, and I've said this about the NBA more so than the MLB, because I think that there's not fully on every single NBA squad, I don't think they have full NBA talent. And I think if they cut down the number of teams, which, that's not going to happen. But, it used to be that every team had, 3 solid players, 3, potential all-stars, and then the bench was solid. And it was a real battle between teams. There wasn't such disparity amongst, the lower level teams and the teams that were in the playoffs. And it just seems that, the level of talent is just not enough, to be competitive throughout the entire league. And I think that might be true a little bit of baseball. The lower level teams, even though they get a spark every once in a while, like the Royals a few years ago, Pittsburgh, the Marlins, who is really who's really interested?
Yeah, there are too many
And
bad teams. There are too
too
many.
many.
There are too
And
many
I don't
bad
think there's
teams.
Rob, I have
too
to
many.
agree.
There's enough talent.
I have to agree with you, Rob. All jokes aside about the best players playing with the Yankees. I live in Orange County in Angel territory, and I got to be honest. No one talks about the Angels even here. And I think what happens with
Wow.
Major League Baseball is that they allow the marketing of the team to be regional, and that's the difference between the NFL and the NBA. The league does a good job of promoting the league so that in each market, it's not just left up to the teams, because it shouldn't be like we should be talking about Mike Trout. There should be still excitement that we have one of the greatest players in the history of the game playing for us, but you don't even hear that,
Right.
And I think something has to do with the lack of maybe how the teams do it. And what do they do when the team isn't producing? Well, there's still there's still ways to market your team and market your talent. And this goes back to a little bit what Roberto was saying. Excuse me, sorry for the stutter there. What Roberto was saying, where they don't market their young talent enough, and they feel like that's singling out, the individual player. Yeah, but when your team is, excuse my language, shitty, that's what you need to keep the fans interested, to keep those players at the forefront of the national fan base. And so that's where Major League Baseball is lacking to the other three leagues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean and we'll see, but I mean, yeah, there are too many bad teams. But we talked a lot about Trout. Or Trout was mentioned there, and what's always interesting to me is that for a time, people when they mention Trout, they would mention another player by the name of Bryce Harper. And I always thought that was unfair to Mike Trout because he's so much better than Bryce Harper. What are you guys' thoughts on Harper and his season in Philadelphia? I mean, he went out and he signs the largest free agent contract. We know Trout got a bigger contract, but that was an extension, right? So, Harper goes out there and gets the biggest free agent contract. But what do you think about his season if you've been following it? And I know, Roberto, I know you do a lot of stuff because you do your power rankings and all the rest of that. I mean, what's the group's thoughts here on our man Bryce Harper?
Well, I don't see anything wrong with his season. I think it's going great.
Yeah, you say that as a Mets fan.
I hope he does it against us. We've been handling him pretty well, so I ain't worried about old Bryce.
I think Bryce is a good player, but I think he's definitely, and I hate using the word overrated when it comes to players, but I think he's definitely overrated, and he's a lot of it comes with the hype. He was very hyped up getting drafted, very hyped up getting called up. I think he was like 19 years old when he first got called up.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of what's carried him is the hype, and he had that one MVP season where he was an absolute beast. But if you really look at his career, it doesn't warrant the contract he got. But he's one of those guys that finds ways to market himself. And I guess that's what teams see. It's like, well, we can make some money off of the contract we're giving him based on the how he markets himself and kind of attracts to the young crowd. And he's kind of like the rebel of Major League Baseball, per se.
Well, I mean, for me, here's the thing. Like, I used to work for Bryce Harper's agent, and so the Trout versus Bryce Harper kind of theme was definitely something we paid attention to. But here's my thought. This is my personal opinion on both of them. I think Bryce Harper was an immense talent coming up, right, and coming into the league. He was young, went out and played hard, had a nice stretch of seasons where he produced otherworldly numbers, right? Trout, quiet, went about his business. His talent produced, these otherworldly numbers, but the difference is consistency. Now, that's not a negative on Bryce Harper. It's just Trout has been consistent from almost day one all the way through. And so I think it's more of a result of the individual player, of who they are and their character. And that's not a negative on Bryce Harper saying he's not, he doesn't have good character. My point is that Trout's just more consistent, and he has been. And so for me, that's the difference. And to your point, Jeff, I think what when you mentioned, unfair to Trout to compare, well, the reason they were comparing is because when you're looking at on-the-field performance, the stretch that Bryce Harper had matched Mike Trout. Now, when you look at the longevity, you look at went through the MVP season, there were stretches where the conversation was 1 and 2, them two, because of the on-the-field performance. And then when you look at longevity, right, career-wise, obviously the consistency is where Trout separates himself. But when you look at the 3-year stretch, right, their numbers were very similar. Their impact was very similar. So not a negative on each one, just the consistency is what sets apart Mike Trout.
I think we may have to go to the videotape on that one, because to me, Mike Trout has been head and shoulders above. And again, this is not, we're talking about the best player in the game. So this is not to disparage Bryce Harper, right? I mean, when you say Trout is better than, he's better than everybody who's playing. You know what I mean? So it's right. It's not something that's necessarily a negative towards Bryce. But Trout has been otherworldly from day one. You know what I mean? And it for me, I think, I think Harper, it's great sometimes to have the hype or whatever, if you want to, market and do all those types of things. But at some point, man, you just got to put it together on the field. And I just think, to your point, Victor, when you talk about Trout being more consistent, that implies that Harper has been inconsistent. And I think that's the issue, right? He did have that very great MVP season. And then the very next year, he didn't even get an MVP vote. That's almost unheard of, right? Your MVP one year, next year, you don't even get an MVP vote. So I think that's part of the problem, for Harper. And we'll see what happens in Philadelphia. And you guys know, man, they treat Santa Claus, mean in Philadelphia, right? So if Bryce don't turn it around, that could be a tough place to play. And I live down here in southern Jersey, and so I'm right outside Philly. And it can be tough down here, man. And so it's going to be interesting to see if Harper, how and he's up and he's there for a long haul, right? 13 years.
No opt-outs, nothing.
Yeah.
It's straight, like pretty much.
Yeah, it could get ugly.
But I was surprised at no opt-out. But here's the thing. I think Philadelphia is a blue-collar town, and they're going to appreciate, because I think actually Bryce Harper is kind of a blue-collar guy, and I think he's, unless he shits the bed in terms of on-the-field performance, I think he'll be all right. Even if he doesn't produce, 40 home run, 130 RBI seasons. But the fact that he works hard, he hustles, and that's the way he comes off, the city will appreciate that and will make it worth it. Now, it's just a matter of whether he can keep that up for 13 years, although he is young, so we'll see.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I mean, I think, look, this first year, a lot of times the first year of a big deal, guys tend to struggle because they try to justify the contract. So we'll see what happens with him going forward. But I do agree. I mean, he does play hard. He is a gritty player. Philly's a gritty town. So, those things seem to go together. But I'm kind of with Rob. I'm kind of liking the way he's playing right now. He's kind of pedestrian. You know what I mean? 19 home runs, 70 RBIs, in that bandbox. And that's what he's doing. We'll take that, as Mets fans.
Exactly. And Real Muto hitting behind him is not, I mean, that's not a lot of protection. So
I think the Phillies definitely expected a lot more from what they have.
No question.
And the amount of talent on that roster, it just sometimes it doesn't work right. It looks good on paper, but it has to produce on the field.
Yeah, and I gotta be honest. Part of that as well, and this is just my personal thought on it, and not a not speaking negatively of the manager, but the reputation of Kapler during his career was that he was a very high energy, go type of guy. And when you're trying to mesh a team together, a clubhouse with young guys and some veterans, I'm not saying that that's how he is as a manager, but I can't envision that someone would change their stripes. So I don't know if necessarily that's been a positive. I mean, there's been some positives to have someone like that in your clubhouse, but I think for a growing team, I don't know if that's necessarily the right recipe. That's just kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, and like I said, and like Rob said, I look at it and I'm fine with it as a Mets fan.
Yeah.
So let's get back to this Mets and Yankees thing. So how's this season going to end up? I'm gonna start with Rob, Roberto Duran, and with Victor. How do you see the Yankee season ending up here?
Right,
and don't tell me with a ticker tape parade. I don't want to hear that.
No. So this is how I'm going to end. I'm going to say to the Mets fans, enjoy your season. We definitely invite you to watch us during October. Because we'll be playing in the playoffs and you won't. Now I won't say how far we'll get, but we'll be in the playoffs and you can watch us.
That is some qualification right there. I won't. You don't know how far you're gonna get. If you don't win the World Series, it's a failure.
I agree with that, but remember we just talked earlier about Houston, so it just matters. I guess it depends on when we'll be facing Houston.
Okay, so Roberto, what do you have to say about it?
I think we take Houston down, and I think we go all the way and bring a title back to New York the way it's supposed to be brought back. I think once these guys get back, Sevy and Betances, I think, that roster, once it gets full, once they get healthy, they're the best team in baseball. And as far as the Mets go, I think you guys are, you'll make a push. You'll get everyone excited and hyped up, and then you'll do what you do and fall just short. But I think the Yankees take it over here.
Well, when you say just short, you mean like Game 7 of the World Series?
One track. No, just short to warning track. They'll hit one out and it's warning.
On the warning track.
The warning track, though.
The Mets will be missing a little of that launch angle to get over the hump.
yeah, let's get the new analytics. So the launch angle on the Mets season didn't quite reach the wall.
Oh, man.
They got jokes, Rob. They got
a lot of jokes.
The exit velocity wasn't what it should have been.
They got a lot of jokes for
or maybe it was. That's why they didn't make the playoffs.
For a team with a pitching staff of hopes and dreams, you guys got a lot of jokes, boy. I tell you, and that's what you got. You got a pitching staff that, once you get into September, if you guys are hoping Severino and Betances come back, and they come back, and they got to come back almost in mid-season form to give you, to fulfill those hopes and dreams. I don't know if you're at that point where you can bank on that. So
how you see the Mets though, Rob? How you see them ending up?
Well, I gotta tell you, like I said earlier, and when we first started this conversation, this weekend is what I'm looking at. This weekend is the test. I mean, I think to a man in that locker room, they all know that this weekend is where they're gonna, let it all hang out, and everything that they've been doing these last couple of weeks. If they blow through the Nationals, I think we get the wild card. I think we get a wild card spot, and then from there, you'd have to ask me towards the end of September, looking at the pitching staff. I mean, look, if Stroman comes in and he's real Stroman-like, and I mean the sinker working and just running through these National League teams, because you got to remember, this is his first year of facing teams with at least one automatic out in the lineup. So I like his chances, and if he does that and everybody else stays solid, I think we get to the division series, and let's just leave it there, and that'll make me very, very happy.
Well, here's what I'm gonna say, because we heard Roberto and Victor making their jokes about launch angle and exit velocity for the Mets and all the rest of that. But this is what I want to say: if the Mets make the playoffs, then Victor and Roberto have to come back on the show and sing the Mets theme song.
Oh boy!
Oh, I like that.
If the Mets don't make the playoffs, then Rob and I will come back on the show and sing the Yankees theme song.
I'll take that. And they're both thinking, wait, do we have a theme song?
I'm not gonna lie.
It's like they're stumped, Rob.
They are stumped. We'll dress up like the Yankee mascot. How about that?
Yeah. We'll dress up as the Yankee mascot and sing the Yankees theme song. Fair bet. That's a fair bet right there.
That's a fair bet. Sounds good. I like it.
I'm not worried. So I'm not even going to learn the Mets theme song because I'm not worried about that one.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll talk to you in September. Wow. We'll talk to you in September when the Mets are they lock up the wild card. We'll send you, both of you, by email, the lyrics.
Got it.
Okay, we'll see.
Well, listen, guys, it's been fun, man. It's been fun. And listen, if we should keep an eye on the standings, I mean, the Yankees are going to make the playoffs, right? I mean, they have a good sized lead in the East, and again, they're battling Houston, right, for the best record in the American League. But if the Mets, stay in this thing deep into September, and of course, if they make it, we're going to have to get back together again.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And
that's right.
You guys thought you had fun with this launch angle exit velocity stuff. Oh man, Rob and I gonna bring it.
Oh yeah, because it'll be on like popcorn.
Something like that.
I'll tell you guys what. I'll put my little career on the line here. If the Mets make the playoffs, I'll put a video up on my page with a Mets hat on, praising the Mets. I'll give you guys a full 30 seconds praising the Mets.
All right.
That's fair. I'll promote my. I've got a Mets jersey because I collect jerseys. I've got a Mets jersey somewhere hidden in the house. I'll wear a Mets jersey and put it on social media.
Okay. And what does and it's nothing for Rob and I to do, Rob Hoskins and I to do if your Yankees do something?
Well, here's the thing. Our bet is more of a safer bet, so I'm willing to do something, and I don't require anything back because most likely, you guys won't be doing anything back anyway. So,
my gosh.
Okay.
See, this is where it goes. But anyway, it was a good conversation until they have to make us feel like second class citizens.
Well, that's exactly.
They're gonna try.
No, that's the Mets in New York.
Boy.
Okay. All right, fellas. Well, look, it's been fun. But let's stay in touch and let's see how the season goes. And no matter what, I think as we do get to the end of the season, we talked about a lot of teams that are bad teams in baseball, but the good teams are pretty good. You know what I mean? Whether it's, Houston, the Yankees, the Dodgers. We didn't even talk about the Dodgers, right? There's some good teams in baseball, and hopefully we'll have some good pennant races coming down the stretch. But until then, thanks guys for coming on, man, and let's stay in touch, and let's see if we reconnect before the season ends.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Okay, guys. All right,
guys.